Hi, and welcome to my channel. Thanks for watching, and thank you too for those who have subscribed and pressed the like button and chosen notifications. I want you to know that I really appreciate your support, and a warm welcome to any new folks. This channel is all about the history of religions and spiritual movements, and I hope you enjoy the videos. This one is about the Third Ecumenical Council and of the ancient Christian church. It was held in Ephesus in the year 431. Now I have videos on the first and second councils held at Nicaea and Constantinople, and I hope that you check those out so that you'll get a complete picture of what the early church bishops had to face and the doctrines that they developed. In the previous council in Constantinople, there were two adversaries, Eusebius and Athanasius. In the battle for the victory in this council today, the main players are Nestorius and Cyril. Between the end of the Council of Constantinople in 381 and Ephesus in 431, the Roman Empire was under siege. And this would eventually have lasting effects upon the unity of the church. The Emperor Theodosius the Great died in 395, and he was succeeded by two sons, Arcadius in the east, Honorius in the west. The new emperors had the same Christian beliefs as their father. This was a time of crisis as Germanic tribes were migrating into the east, and they were taking over the weaker lands of the west. You'll remember some of the names of these groups from your own studies of history in school. The Vandals, the Alans, the Visigoths, the Burgundians, the Franks, and the Huns. Well, as always, I have some notes on the council with me, and as you may have noticed, one of the issues that I have on this channel is lighting, and I'm attempting to eliminate the reflection off my glasses that I know is irritating sometimes when you're watching a video. And so I'm trying moving my iPad over to the left so that maybe it's not shining on my glasses this week. Let me know if it's any better or if it doesn't make any difference to you at all. So anyway, it was during this period that Augustine wrote his masterpiece entitled The City of God. It was in response to the taunts of the pagans who said that these kinds of invasions never happened when their gods were worshipped. They would never have permitted such a disaster to the city. Well, by the time of the Ephesus Council, in much of the Western Empire, the Germans were raising up new kingdoms. They were abolishing the Roman laws and were worshiping according to the Arian Christian faith. And remember, Arius had been rejected, or Arianism had been rejected as heresy long ago in that first council of Nicaea. Well, in the east, the empire was able to hold firm against the Goths and the Huns. In the year 408, as a young ruler, Arcadius died. He was replaced by his 7-year-old son, Theodosius II. And Theodosius II, just like his grandfather Theodosius the Great, would call a general council, this time in Ephesus in the year 431. So against the background of this tottering and struggling empire, the bishops of the church were embroiled in bitter battles. Now, the controversy in this council involved the title Theotokos, the title Mother of God or God Bearer, as applied to Mary. Now, Nestorius and his followers taught, let no one call Mary Theotokos, for Mary is only a human being, and it's impossible that God should be born of a human being. Now, people rebelled against this teaching, for this designation of Mary was an ancient one. It's found in the very first Greek prayer to Mary from the 2nd century. From the 3rd century. It was used by many famous theologians, by Origen, by Athanasius, Eusebius of Caesarea, Cyril of Jerusalem, Gregory of Nazianzus, and others. And you may be familiar with some of those bishops as great writers of the ancient church. It was part of the traditional faith of the church. So Nestorius began to attack the title every chance he got, and the people came to Mary's defense, even to the extent that as Nestorius preached his sermons, he was heckled by the crowds who were shouting, Mary, the Mother of God. Well, the first two councils had centered on the nature of God and an understanding of the Trinity. This council was centered on the nature of Christ, what is called Christology, understanding how Jesus, or the Christ, could have been both man and God. So, although it began as an argument over the Mother of God, it involved different Christologies. Nestorius represented what is called the Antiochene tradition, and he began with Jesus as presented in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and attempted to explain how can this man also be God? Now, his opponent was Cyril, and he represented the Alexandrian tradition. And this tradition began with the prologue in John's Gospel, where the quote-unquote Word is God, and then it attempts to understand the implications of the Logos, or the Word, taking flesh. Well, Nestorius taught that Christ had two natures, and by nature he meant the concrete character of being. These two natures remain unaltered and distinct in the union. The Godhead existing in the man, and the man existing in the Godhead without any mixture or confusion. Divinity and humanity each retained its own characteristics and its own operation, the things that it did. Humanity was not swallowed up in divinity, for Christ had to have lived a genuinely human life in order for him to actually have redeemed mankind. Yet he said, Christ is indivisible in his being Christ, but he is twofold in his being God and man. We know not two sons or two Christs, but one and the same, who is perceived in his created and his incarnate natures. Well, Cyril, the opposition, wrote 3 letters to Nestorius describing his own theology and pointing out the flaws in Nestorianism. In the third letter, he stated, "Flesh was not converted into the divine nature, nor was the nature of God debased into the nature of flesh. The Word was not merely a man who carried God with him. United by a union of natures, the Word brought about an indwelling, similar to that of the soul of a man and the relationship of the soul to the person's body." We say that the Holy Virgin is Theotokos because she brought forth after the flesh God personally united in the flesh. The Word, co-eternal with the Father and creator of the universe, did not begin to be with flesh, but having personally united man's nature to himself, the Word consented to be born in the flesh from her womb. Now, like the previous disagreements, this one became political as well as theological, with the various bishops taking sides and attempting to manipulate the outcome in their favor. The council was opened by Cyril on June 22nd, 431, although not everyone who planned to participate had actually arrived. The outcomes, almost immediately, were the acceptance of the title Theotokos for Mary and the condemnation of Nestorius as a heretic. The council reaffirmed their acceptance of the Nicene Creed as orthodox, basic to the faith, and they accepted Cyril's second letter that he had written to Nestorius as the same, that is, being orthodox. In the end, after additional political maneuvering, and I'll give you just one example of that in just a minute, a compromise profession of faith was accepted by Cyril, which had been prepared by Count John, a representative of the emperor, and his associates. It had been written in August of 431 in an alternative council, and it read as follows: "We confess, therefore, our Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, perfect God and perfect man, consisting of a rational soul and a body begotten of the Father before all ages, as touching his Godhead, the same in the last days for us and for our salvation, born of the Virgin Mary, as touching his manhood, the same of one substance with the Father as touching his Godhead, and of one substance with us as touching his manhood. For of two natures a union has been made. For this cause we confess one Christ, one Son, one Lord. In accordance with this sense of the unconfused union, we confess the Holy Virgin to be Theotokos, because God the Word became incarnate and was made man, from the very conception united to himself, the temple taken from her. And as to the expressions concerning the Lord in the Gospels and the epistles, we're aware that theologians understand some as common, as relating to one person, and others they distinguish as relating to two natures, explaining those that befit the divine nature according to the Godhead of Christ, and those of a humble sort according to his manhood. Well, to this, Cyril responded in a letter: "Let the heavens rejoice and the earth be glad, for the wall of division is broken down." and in it he accepted John's creed as fulfilling the meaning of the Creed of Nicaea, the Nicene Creed. Now let me just share one example of the politicalization of the affair that I mentioned previously. After the initial decisions had been made by the council, Cyril immediately sent off a report with the results to the emperor, and Nestorius and 10 of his supporters fired off a vigorous denunciation of the whole affair. The emperor's representative, who received these reports, declared the whole proceeding null and void, asked the emperor what to do next. Just a couple of days later, John, the Patriarch of Antioch, and his bishops arrived to attend the council. I believe that I misspoke just a few moments ago when I said John represented the emperor. John is a bishop from Antioch, and he was just arriving at the council. And when they learned that it was already ended and the result, well, they ignored both what the council had done and what the emperor had said, and they held their own meeting and produced the compromise document that I just read from. Now, this document was also quickly sent off to the emperor in Constantinople. 2 days later, I believe these things crossed in transport, June 29th, notice came from the emperor annulling the action of the council and instructing everyone to wait there in Ephesus until a high court official arrived to restore order. In the meantime, during July, 2 legates and a priest from the Pope arrived on site. But after listening to the proceedings, they approved what the council had done. Finally, in August, the imperial commissioner, Count John, finally arrived. After deliberation, he called all factions together for a discussion, but it failed to produce any result. So he too asked the emperor for further instructions. All the parties agreed that they needed imperial confirmation validating their decisions. They were going to leave it to the emperor to make the decision. Count John put the 3 deposed Nestorian bishops under house arrest and waited instructions. So Nestorius immediately dispatched his staunch supporters, a highly placed government official, to the imperial court to lobby for his position. Cyril's personal physician approached important members of the court, and he outdid his rival with gifts from the patriarchal treasury: cloth, tapestries, ivory furniture, ostriches, and $1 million in hard cash. Not unnaturally, the court began to veer toward Cyril's way of thinking. I'd say that human beings have always acted in the same manner. What do you think? I have no further comment here. Nestorianism itself had a long future ahead of it. Unlike the long-vanished Arians, Nestorians still live on after travel during the centuries through Syria and then Persia, Iraq, Arabia, the coast of India, and even Turkestan on the border of China. The Nestorian Church survived the Muslim conquest And eventually, during the Mongol invasions of the 13th and 14th centuries, they fled to Kurdistan, where they lived, known as Assyrian Christians. As of the late 20th century, and I don't have figures updated later than about 1987, but at that time there were an estimated 80,000 Nestorians living in various places in the Middle East, 5,000 in India, and 25,000 in North and South America. They still refuse to accept the title of Theotokos, Mary as Mother of God, and they revere Nestorius as a saint. Among the Assyrians of Kurdistan was discovered in 1897 Nestorius's final work, the tome of Heraclides. It was first printed then in the West in 1910. Well, I hope you found this video informative and can join me again next time. Don't forget to leave your questions and comments for me. I do try to answer them all. I usually post on or release a post on Saturday mornings, so I hope you can join with me next Saturday. In the meantime, please have a great week. Stay safe and healthy. I'll see you soon.